Today we're going to be modelling the rectangular hollows section, commonly referred to as RHS. This is used in robotics all the time for building structure around your robot. We're going to model this one, which is 25 inches long, 2 inches high and 1 inch wide. Okay, and this is the finished product here in Fusion. So we're going to start a new design so we can go through all the steps to make this. So I click the plus up here in the top right hand corner. I want a part design. It's already selected. I'm clicking it again, and then I'm going to click again. These are all defaults. Just leave them where they are. Click create new. That's started my new design. Doesn't look very exciting at the moment, but that's because we haven't started with anything. We've got to click on the add sketch icon. Now, when I click the add sketch icon, that's also inside the create menu in here, but I clicked it out on the thing. Holding the mouse still, it says select a plane or a face that you want to draw on. I want to actually draw this on the front face here. I don't want to draw from the top like we usually do, because I want this to sort of be horizontal when I'm finished with it. So I'm going to click this face here so that it's drawing on the front. Now your view will automatically spin around. I've got that feature turned off. I want to draw a rectangle on here, so I'm going to do the shortcut for a rectangle, which is R here, right? That actually draws a 2-point rectangle, all right? So if I click R on the keyboard, it automatically goes to the 2-point rectangle. I can easily change to the center rectangle here by just clicking here. Now I want to place my center right on the origin, so one click there. Then I start to pull my mouse out in the direction that I want it to go, and I have to now type in my dimensions. Now, we can't actually buy the 2-inch extrusion. We can buy 50mm extrusion. Now, 2-inch extrusion is 50.8mm, but we can only buy 50mm extrusion. So we're going to actually make this out of metric extrusion. I'm going to type 50 here. Now, to move the mouse from this particular dimension down to the bottom dimension, I need to use a tab key on my keyboard. So from the left hand side under the 1, and that'll take the focus from there down to the bottom, and then I can type in 25mm down there. So this is the metric equivalent of 2-inch by 1-inch. So I can move around through those dimensions by clicking tab like this. And then once I'm happy with both those, I can press enter to lock them in. Now, it's very common when you're learning to not do it that way. You draw the rectangle and then you press enter and you haven't dimensioned it. If that happens, you can add the dimensions afterwards. So to simulate that, I'm just going to delete these dimensions. Going to click on this dimension, hit delete. Click on this one, hit delete. You don't need to do this if you've done it. This is just showing you what you would do if you ended up with a blue unconstrained rectangle like this. All right, what I want to do now is I'm going to just click anywhere on the design so nothing is selected, or pressing the escape key on your keyboard will do the same thing. D is going to turn on the dimension tool, which is down here, with a little shortcut here. All right, so I'm going to click D to turn that on. Now, I'll show you a couple of ways to do the dimension. If I want to dimension a whole line, I just click anywhere on this line, one click there, and then the next click is where I want the writing to appear. So I'm going to click down here to place it roughly halfway between here, and just out of your design. You don't want your dimensions in your design, you want them outside your design if you can get them. So click down here, then type in 25, press enter. Now that's constrained this, it's made these lines black and these ones blue. You think, why is the line that I just dimensioned blue? That's because it's can still move this particular line here. It can move up and down. We've only dimensioned it left and right. We've still got to dimension the length of this line here. So I'll show you a different way to dimension this one. I'm going to turn the dimension tool on with D, and I can dimension from a point to a point. So I'm going to click once on this point here, and then I'm going to select, that point must have already been selected. I'm going to press escape a few times. All right, D for dimension. One click on here, all right, another click down here, and then the third click is where the writing is going to go, and then type in 50 there. The thing that happened just then was if something's selected before you hit the dimension tool, pardon me, it will dimension what was selected when you first started. So, for instance, I had that a particular point was selected because I grabbed that point to try and drag the thing into shape. So when I click dimension, it had already assumed I'd done the first click here. And then when I clicked up there, it was dimensioning vertically between here. I'll show you something else that happens. If you try and over-dimension this thing, so I've got one dimension going from here to here. All right, when I try and click out here, you'll see I've already got the 50mm out here. And now I'm trying to dimension again. You'll get this warning. This warning says your dimension would over-constrain your Sketch, create a driven dimension instead. So what a driven dimension is it's one that you can't actually type the numbers in, but it'll show you what that dimension is. So it puts brackets around it. So if I was to change the value of this dimension over here by double clicking on it and changing that to, like, say, 52 mil, this would update over here. So it's just sort of like, it's like a measuring of the distance from here to here. So if you ever get that driven message, that means you're trying to over dimension. What you're trying to dimension is already been dimensioned. And I'm going to delete that by hitting the delete on the keyboard, because I only just want mine. I'm going to change this back to 50. Put that back there. So that's what we want. Now I'm going to finish. No, I'm not going to finish my sketch because I want to give this some size. I want to give it a thickness, so we can extrude this into place. So instead of drawing another whole rectangle inside here that's a bit smaller, I can use the offset tool. It lives in the modify menu. It's here, it's got the O shortcut, and it's also docked up here. So I'm going to use the shortcut. I'm going to click out of these menus, just going to hit O on my keyboard to turn on the offset menu. And the first thing it's wanting is which curve do you want to offset, because this is blue. I'm going to click that. Now this arrow at the moment is facing inwards, so as I drag inwards slowly, you can see that it starts to create a triangle going inwards. That means when the arrow is facing inwards at the start, that means positive numbers go inwards, right? Sometimes the arrow faces outwards and the positive numbers go outwards, but you can go either way. It's just sometimes the negatives go in, sometimes the negatives go out. So I want to make sure mine's going inwards, right? And I want the distance that it's going to go to be 1.5 millimeters. You can also just use this flip to just like add the minus sign or take the minus sign away, but we need to make sure ours is going inwards, and I'm going to click OK. Now I want to extrude this into the RHS that we're trying to make. So I can hit the E keyboard on my keyboard to start the extrude menu. I don't have extrude up here at the moment because I'm still got the sketch open. It's still in sketch editing mode. But as soon as I click E, it'll actually close the sketch. It'll finish the sketch automatically, and then the menus will change up here. So I'm just going to click E on my keyboard. You can see now the sketch is finished. Whenever extruding, always like to extrude in 3D view, so I click the house up here. All right, the first thing it's wanting here is this is blue, so it's saying what profiles do you want to extrude. I want to extrude this profile here. I've got a mouse with a scroll wheel, so I can drag this around by the center scroll wheel, or I can zoom in and zoom out to make it easy to select. If I click that, it says one profile selected. Now you can extrude multiple profiles. I could also extrude that, but that would end up making a solid piece of tube stock. I actually want I can click that again to make that go away. So as I click those, you can see this is 2 selected. I click it again, it goes back to 1 selected. I just want this edge piece to be selected here. I can now grab the arrow and pull this in either direction. It'll grow in the direction that I'm drag it. All right. And you'll see when I drag this out here, I'm going to zoom out a little bit with my scroll wheel. This is the distance that it's extruding from here to here. Now with this particular design, I want the center point, like the center of my origin, to end up being in the middle of my extrusion. So I don't want it to grow out in one direction. I want it to grow in both directions. And that's this extent type here. Sorry, not extent type. That's the direction that I wanted to extrude in. I want to click in here. And I want to go to symmetric, so that as I pull it out in one way, it grows equally amounts out the middle. That'll always keep my origin directly in the middle. I could do 2 sides and have to drag it out the same amount, but it just makes more sense to do a symmetric extrusion. Now this distance here is the distance that we've pulled it from the middle. So that's like 65 millimeters from here to here, right? I'm actually interested in an overall length, so we can change the measurement, change it from the center to the outside to outside to outside. So by clicking that, that now means this 65 here is the distance from there to there, which is our overall length. I want, for our design, for this to be 25 inches long. So I can literally type in here. The minus sign here doesn't really matter, just because it's symmetric now. You can pull this both ways, and it ends up being the same thing. But yeah, so I want 25 inches in here. Now, we can just put inch measurement straight into Fusion by putting 25 and then the double quote marks. And you can see here it's done the maths, it's changed that into 635 mil. Zooming out a little bit here so I can see what's going on. Moving that back to the center of my screen. For this particular thing, because we're using metric extrusion in a robot that's going to be sized to an imperial measurement, we actually need to add 0.4 of a mil to this end and 0.4 of a mil to that end, so that it's a nice solid rectangle that's 27 inches by 27 inches when we finish, because this is an inch is 25.4 mil, 2 inches 50.8 mil. So that's why we're going to add, and we can do the math straight in here. We can add inches and metric in the actual distance box. So 25 and plus 0.8 millimeters. I would have to put millimeters in there, but it's just a good habit to do that. The default unit is millimeters, so I could just say plus 0.8. Taper angle, that's for when you're trying to make your extrusion gets bigger or smaller as it goes, so you need to make sure that's still left at 0. And the operation is create a new body. That's what we're trying to create here, so that's okay. Going to click on that, and that will create my extrusion. Now, by default, that sketch that was there, it looks like it's gone. It's disappeared. It's still there. It's down here in our collection, right? And it's still here in our collection of sketches here, but it's had its eye visibility turned off. Now, that's a feature of extrude. Whenever you do an extrude, the sketch that you're extruding on gets turned off, because more than likely you don't need it to be there. But if you ever wanted to go back to that sketch, you can turn it back on so you can see it. You can edit it. You can right click on down here and choose edit on that sketch. All the things that you do are saved in a timeline down here, so you can always go back in time to change things. The next step we want to do is start putting our holes through here. Now, the most logical way to do this is to put a hole right in the middle, perfectly in the middle, and then pattern that symmetrically outwards. So to do that hole, I'm going to create a sketch on this face here. So I'm going to click Add Sketch. Now, I didn't have anything selected when I clicked Add Sketch, so it's now asking me where do you want to sketch on. It gives me the options of sketching on the planes of the view cube. They would be sketching in the origin, which is inside this tube. I actually want to sketch on this face of the tube here. And as I move the mouse around, you see that it highlights. So I'm going to sketch on this face. Again, when you do that, it'll automatically spin like that. Now I need to draw a circle on here so I can use that circle to extrude through here. So I'm going to use the shortcut of C for circle. Right, I'm going to place my center point on the origin, so one click there. Then I'm going to start to move my mouse out to give it some size, and then I need to type in its size. Its size is going to be 5 millimeters. So type in 5. It looks like it's disappeared, but it's just sitting there behind that box. Right, that's done that. And if I zoom in there, you can see my little 5 mil circle. If for some reason you didn't dimension your circle, you can add the dimension later by, again, just hitting the D key, clicking on the circle, and then writing in the 5. I'm going to finish my sketch again now. I'm going to pull this around into 3D view, and you can see my little circle drawn there. Now I just clicked away from the mouse, the design there, to make sure nothing was selected. I'm going to press E for extrude. Now, Fusion was smart enough to know that the last sketch that I drew was a circle, so it's actually automatically selected that profile to extrude. If that wasn't selected, and I can cross that to simulate that, it would say profile. What profile do you want to extrude? I want to extrude that tiny little profile there. So I'd zoom in and I'd click that. Now it says one profile is selected. It did that automatically because there was only one profile in our entire design, in our sketch, that was visible at the time. Now, if I grab this circle, if I pull this outwards, it's defaulting to a join operation to pull that circle and make a tube going outwards. If I push it back through, it realizes that it wants to be a cut operation. You can change these manually, but most of the time it's smart enough to know what to choose. So I want to cut a hole through this side and also out through the other side over there. At the moment, I'm well and truly cutting all the way through with the -60 in the distance, but it's a better habit to change the extent type, instead of being from distance, to just saying all, and that will extrude all the way through the model. That way, if this ever got changed, if this got changed to 125 mil by editing this sketch here, it would still go all the way through. So it's a good habit when you're doing a through hole to change the extent type to all. The operation is cut. It goes red when it's cutting operation here, just to symbolize that it's cutting through the model. Like I said, you can change that. That could be a new body, to create a new body inside there. You could be joining a circle right through there. You would see that circle in there, but we want to cut a hole. So it's going to be cut. Again, you don't have to change that because it's going to default to that anyway. Click OK, and now you can see that's cut a hole through there, and if we spin this around enough, there you can see the hole goes all the way through. Now I need to pattern that hole. I'm just going to click the home button to do a simple zoom out and relocate my view. I want to pattern that hole all the way this way and all the way this way. So I can create a rectangular pattern. Now it's docked up here because I know what it looks like, but if you've got to go looking for it, click create, then go to pattern, and then rectangular pattern. All right, I'm going to click this shortcut up here. Now, the things that we can pattern, we can change. We have rectangular patterns, we have circular patterns, and we have patterns along a path. But we want a rectangular pattern in this case. We can pattern bodies, faces, features, and construction geometry. So a body would mean if we want a pattern of these particular pieces of RHS, we can make like multiple pieces of those. Patterning faces is a not used that often, but you can use that feature. Most of the ones that we want to do is pattern a feature. Right. Now, a feature is these things down here in the timeline, these extrudes. This extrude here was the extrude that made our entire channel. This extrude here is the extrude that did our cut through. So we want to pattern that feature. When I clicked that, the objects went to one selected, and you can see that the edges of this are also now blue as they're selected. You don't have to select down here. You can pattern a feature by clicking on a face. I'm going to clear this selection here with a cross. You can pattern a feature by clicking on the face that was resulted from creating that feature. So I click on here, and it's going, yes, one selected, and you can see down here it's blue. You're patterning the feature that did the extrude through here. Now, when you're patterning in sketches, you get the arrows automatically to pull them in the directions. You don't when you're patterning bodies and features. You have to tell it which way you want to pattern. So I've got to go move from my objects selected. Now, I can have more. I can pattern more than one feature if I wanted to, but in this case, it's only the one. I want to click on axes. Right, so I can select the axes. Now, I want to pattern it this way, and I want to pattern it up and down. So if I click one of these, any line that's facing this direction, I could use the origin line in here, or any line on my design that's facing long ways. That will start to put these arrows on here to pattern in the right direction. It's had a guess at which way the second direction of your pattern should go. I always like to explicitly define the second direction by clicking a vertical line. Right, so now it says we're going to pattern this way, and we're going to want to pattern up and down. So the blue arrow that's selected is axis 1. So if the vertical arrow was blue, axis 1 would be patterning up and down. But in our case, the horizontal arrow is blue, right? So axis 1 is what's patterning here. Now the spacing between these holes, or the pattern of these holes, is 1/2 inch. So I'm going to select all of this, type in 0.5, use the quote marks to enter inches directly, and you'll now see that I'll put this view around. You can see that it's starting to create, it's a bit difficult with the origin there, but it's starting to create 3 holes going out that direction at 1/2 inch spacing, right? So that's because we've got the direction set to one direction. I actually want these to pattern out both ways from each side. So I can change the direction from one direction to symmetric, and now the 3 holes start on the middle and go out each way, and I can just increase the number. I can either increase it here, over here, I can type it, I can use the little spinners, but as you can see, as I start increasing this number, those holes start patterning out further and further. Now this is 27 or 25 inches long. I can't remember what we did, but I'm just going to try 50. We can adjust it later. Okay, 50 is nearly right. It's patterned there, but it's just patterned one too far out here. So I'm going to take that back to 49. So this must be the 25-inch version that we created. All right, now axis 2. At the moment, it's already set to 3, but we can't see. I'm just going to pull this scroll bar down here so I can get to more of these things. It says we've got 3 in the vertical direction, but at the moment the distance is set to 0, so they're not far enough apart. Now I can pull this arrow out here to set this distance, and you can see that it starts to create all those holes. But that's at 100 mil spacing. I want them to be at 1/2 inch spacing, so 0.5 inch. And again, these have gone up in the direction of the arrow from the middle. So they've patterned upwards, and that's because we have one direction selected here. I want to change that to symmetric so that they pattern out from the middle. It looks a little bit confusing when you have all the ghosting effect there, but basically that's patterned that to the right direction, like 49 that way, 3 this way, 1/2 inch spacing. 49, 1/2 inch, 3, 1/2 inch, both set to symmetric. Click on OK, and that will create a rectangular pattern. And you can see that's a feature. It's created a feature down there. And the reason these are down here in the timeline is because you can actually go back in time and make changes to this. Like I can go, what did this look like before I did the rectangular pattern? I can drag the timeline back, or I can drag it forward, or I can edit this. Maybe I wanted these to be on a different spacing. I can literally double click on that. That brings that box back up where I can make changes to it over here. But at the moment, we're happy with half-inch spacings, 49 and 3. Right, that's done the holes that way. Now we've got to do the holes on this top face here. My view's getting a bit funky, so what I'm going to do is just click the house, and that's just going to reset my view back to zoomed out to full screen, and it's at the right angle so I can see the top face and right. Now I want to do the same process again, so we'll just do this one more quickly this time, and I'll just talk you through it as I'm going. Add sketch on the top face, so click the top face. Yours will spin around automatically. Draw a circle. It doesn't matter if it's this view or this view. It's all the same. You can change the view by clicking on these arrows up here. Now C for circle. One click on the origin. Give it some size. Type in 5. Press enter. That's drawn my circle. I'm going to finish my sketch. Click on 3D view to bring it back to 3D for doing the extrude. Extrude, or E for extrude. Because that was the last sketch we did, it's automatically selected that profile. If that wasn't selected and that was blue with nothing selected, I'd have to zoom in there, click that profile so that says one selected there. All right, start dragging the arrow in the direction I want to go to make it into a cutting operation. Change the extent type to all the way through, so that's cutting all the way through the design. Okay, that's created the cut feature down here. That's our sketch of our circle. That's our cut. Now we want to do the rectangular pattern. And we want to say which direction do we want to pattern this in? Oh, sorry, which feature do we want to... We've got to make sure this says features. And then we say which feature. It's going to be this feature here. Then we've got to select the axes. And we want to pattern it in this direction by clicking that. Now I want my spacing at 0.5 inches. Change my direction to be from one direction to symmetric, and then I need my number of holes to be 49. I'm going to type that in. It's going to take a week otherwise. Click OK. That's now created our aluminium extrusion, which is 25 inches plus 0.8 mils with hole spacings of 0.5. So we now need to save that. So I'm going to go to my save menu here. It doesn't save like Google. It does do little auto saves in case the program crashes, but if you close this program now and choose not to save it, that design will not be saved. So that's just a little step you have to be wary of. You need to navigate to the folder where you want to put this. So yours will be in your user folder, and I'm going to type in here my sizes, 25 inch by 50 millimeters by 25 millimeters. And that's all for that tutorial.